Most gardeners choose what to grow based on what they want to eat. But Stacey Murphy chooses 90% of her crops based on how long they take to harvest. Because in a small garden, every minute you spend harvesting is a minute you are not doing something else. In the next 14 minutes, she is going to rank every major garden crop by harvest time. And the results will completely change how you plan your garden.
So there's a lot of hand picking and looking and pulling off calyxes, and there's a lot of steps to that process, and there's a lot of little tomatoes, and so it just takes longer. And peak season, it can take up to 5 minutes per plant because there's just cherry tomatoes everywhere. This is why when you go to a farm, a lot of times you'll see things that are you pick. These are all the things that the farmers do not want to pick: strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, cherry tomatoes. Have you ever gone to you pick? This is why farmers do you pick, because it's inefficient for them to harvest it. But if somebody wants to come and pick it themselves, that works out really well.
This Q&A was recorded at a past Grow Your Own Vegetables event, where Stacey Murphy reveals her complete crop ranking by harvest efficiency and why this should change what you plant. For more information, free resources, and gentle guidance, you can find us at growyourownvegetables.org. And to grow alongside other gardeners just like you, join our free community at gyov.org.
First, let's talk about harvest time. So I put this together, and this was my first initial take. And so there might be crops that I haven't listed here, and I still want to think about this a little bit more, and I actually want to include this in future courses. I love this question because I find that harvest is where most of my work. And for most people, if they can figure out how to harvest efficiently, they can save a whole bunch of time and effort. And so I was really thinking carefully about my harvest times and how I move in the garden and how I harvest and why I like the crops I do. Because you'll hear me say things like, oh, I don't like growing pole beans and I don't like growing cherry tomatoes because they're such a pain in the butt to harvest. And you'll also hear me, say things like, oh, and peas, too hard. Okra, you don't get enough yield per harvest. And so here's a moment where I actually sat back and said, okay, what are some metrics that we can look at for why I have preferences for different crops? And you're right, I do pick based on harvest time. And I basically pick a lot of my crops. I would say about 90% of my crops I pick because they're easy to harvest. And when something is hard to harvest, I cut it out. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a couple of favorite type of crops that I'll grow, even though they're a pain in the butt to harvest, because they're delicious, they're crowd pleasers, I want to grow them, they're exciting, but I keep those fairly to a minimum, which means, and this is because I have smaller spaces usually, so I have to pick and choose carefully which crops I want to grow. So if I had a really large space, that choice might be different. But in the 100 to 500 square foot range, I'm really choosing things that are easy to harvest, and I'm going to go to the farmer's market for some of the things that I'm just not that excited about harvesting. So a couple of things when you look at this slide to notice. The difference between a cherry tomato plant and a regular tomato plant is huge. So a cherry tomato plant has lots of little cherry tomatoes, and they have those little calyxes on them that I pull off because I don't want to damage my other cherry tomatoes. And then I have different containers for these are the good ones and these are the bad ones. So there's a lot of hand picking and looking and pulling off calyxes, and there's a lot of steps to that process. And there's a lot of little tomatoes, and so it just takes longer. And peak season, it can take up to 5 minutes per plant because there's just cherry tomatoes everywhere. This is why when you go to a farm, a lot of times you'll see things that are you pick. These are all the things that the farmers do not want to pick: strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, cherry tomatoes. Have you ever gone to you pick? This is why farmers do you pick, because it's inefficient for them to harvest it. But if somebody wants to come and pick it themselves, that works out really well. So with our farms in Brooklyn, it was an interesting thing where the kids all love cherry tomatoes. So we plant the cherry tomatoes. We don't even include it in our farmers market necessarily. Those cherry tomato plants are all about the kids. We're like, go to town, harvest them, eat them, whatever you want to do. They're just there to enjoy. And, the kids love picking them and eating them. But as a farm business, we're not relying on those for income because they just weren't that effective.
This is the most counterintuitive revelation in this entire video. The crop everyone loves most is the one that costs professional farmers the most time. In a small garden, every minute matters. Know what you are committing to before you plant a row of cherry tomatoes.
So notice that. And tomato, eggplant, and pepper, all pretty similar. It doesn't take that long to look at the plant and to grab the couple bits of fruit that are on that plant. With peppers, I'm just pulling them off by hand. Eggplant, I'm cutting them, but there's usually only, if it's an Asian eggplant, there might be a couple of eggplant per plant. If it's a tomato, there might be a couple of tomatoes per plant. So it doesn't take that long. Tomatillos, on the other hand, take a while because you got to crawl underneath the tomato and look up at the tomato or the tomatillo. And it takes a good eye to see which tomatillos are ripe. So it takes longer per plant. So that's a couple things to note. Okra. When I'm harvesting okra, you got to get out there every 2 to 3 days because new okra keeps growing in. But every 2 to 3 days, you're really only getting 2 to 3 pieces of okra off the plant, and then you're storing it. And so if you don't have a lot of okra plants, each harvest is so small. It's like, yay, I got 3 okra, if you have a small garden. And, 3 okra, you can throw it in the dish and it's delicious, but it's not like you can make a dish out of it, a full-on dish. So that's why I don't necessarily plant it, although it's very fast to harvest okra. Sometimes okra gets really, really tall, and in that case, you have to reach up, pull it down, and snip off the okra, and that's when it takes a little bit longer. But for the most part, it doesn't take that long because there's just 2 to 3 okra on every plant. So I did this per plant because I figured that you could multiply the number of plants that you have, and you can decide, how long it's going to take to harvest a whole row of something. It just seemed like a good metric to do per plant. Pole beans, oh my goodness, this could be 1 minute per plant every couple days. When they are in full-on mode, especially if they are like the Chinese runner beans, the big long ones, there's so many of them on one plant, and it takes a good minute to hunt for them, grab them, clip them. You kind of need 2 hands to do it. And bush beans, you kind of have to hunt for the beans, they hide. So those are things that take me a while to harvest. And peas, kind of similar, you have to hunt for those peas. Cucumbers, similarly, you kind of have to hunt for them. And they're also heavy, so you can't really hold on to a lot of them while you're harvesting. You have to harvest a couple of cucumbers, put them in a container, move over to the next plant. It takes a little bit longer than, say, your tomato and your eggplant, where you could move pretty fast. And then summer squash, I find, takes me a little bit longer because it's laying on the ground, so you have to do a lot of bending over, and these are larger plants, and so my body position, I'm kind of leaning over the plant. It's uncomfortable, so it takes me a little bit longer. It's harder to cut off the vegetable without hurting the plant. You have to be a little bit more careful. So I just find those take a little bit longer than, say, your tomato, eggplant, and pepper. Those things just so fast for me. And then melon and winter squash, it doesn't take long to harvest any of those things, and you only end up with a couple per plant. So it's just a couple seconds to, grab those things and cut them up.
Screenshot this. These are the crops that give you the most food for the least harvesting time. In a small garden, these are the crops to prioritize.
And then you have all this weight to carry around, which I'll talk about in a second. Kale and collards, I just take a couple seconds per plant, and you saw the video of the collards. I'm just ripping leaves off those plants left and right. I take a little bit longer when I'm harvesting baby plants, but when they're adult plants, they don't take that long at all. And chard, similarly, doesn't take a whole lot of time, but I have to be a little bit more fragile or a little bit more careful with my chard than I do my kale and my collards. The chard has a less resilient stem, and so you really want to be a little bit more cautious. It takes about double the time that it takes me my kale and my collards. Radish, turnips, and beets, it's really fast to pull those out of the ground. Usually they're small, and I'm thinking of small turnips here. So when I talk about turnips, oftentimes I'm growing hockerized, which are those baby turnips. I'm not growing the big turnips, so they just come right out of the ground really easily. And garlic and onion, they take a little bit longer because you have to actually dig in with maybe a digging fork and loosen the soil before you pull that up. So it takes a little bit longer. Same thing with carrot. You got to get in there with a digging fork to make sure it's loose, because you don't want to break the carrot, right, or break the garlic. That's not going to work. So it takes a little bit longer. The thing that takes me the most amount of time is broadcast mixes. And it's because I cut by hand. I use scissors. So I'm sitting there, I'm grabbing a handful, cutting, putting it in the bin, grabbing a handful, cutting, putting it in the bin. It's really repetitive. So it takes me about 30 seconds to a minute per square foot with broadcast mixes. And sometimes it takes longer when you're on your second or third cutting, because it's not as lush. It's not as easy to just grab a handful and cut. So it gets less productive.
Think about
over
where
time,
you
and
were.
It actually
at the
takes you
start
longer
of
to
this video.
harvest, and you get less. So that's why sometimes I only grow two cuttings of a broadcast mix, like arugula or salad or whatever, and then I plant something else, because that third one takes the same amount of time, but you don't get very much harvest. So those are some things to be thinking about. With basil, parsley, oregano, thyme, and mint, some of the other herbs, I literally just grab the plant and cut. A lot of times I'm not even looking at the plant when I cut it because I know it's going to grow back. And so really doesn't take me much time at all. Rosemary and sage takes me a little bit longer because I'm actually looking at the plant and looking to see how much of the plant I want to pull off. It would be different now that I'm here in California, where my rosemary plant is the size of my bed, and I can basically cut that thing as much as I want, and it's always going to grow back. But when it's a little bit cooler and you're a smaller plant, rosemary and sage, I like to be a little bit more delicate and only harvest what I know is going to grow back.
If you have limited space and limited time, herbs win on every metric. High value, fast harvest, easy to process, nutritionally dense. Plant them everywhere.
So that's a little bit about planting or harvesting time. And then just keep in mind that once you harvest, at least for me, my computer is not working. Why is my computer not working? It's not seeming to change slides. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can get it to change slides. Okay. And I saw your question, Roz, so I'm going to answer that one too. I'm just making sure I can get my slides to roll. There we go. So once you harvest all those crops, you've got to carry them, right? And all of the crops, you then are taking field heat out of them, or you're washing the soil off of the root crops. So just keep in mind that I was sharing with you these harvest times, and that's just with the plant, but then there's also how heavy is if you have a giant tub of eggplant, you got to carry that eggplant back to wherever that your harvest station is and your cooling station is. So some crops are heavier than others. Pepper plants are lightweight in comparison to eggplant or melons or watermelons, right? So some of the crops that are really easy to harvest are very heavy. And then some of the crops that take longer to harvest, like your spinach, your arugula, all that stuff, you have a tub of these greens, but they're super lightweight, so it's easy to carry them back. So I didn't necessarily include carrying time because that really varies depending on how much of it you're growing. So that's something else to consider. And then also in terms of washing and weighing and packing all of this stuff, I would say the crops that take me a little bit longer to work with are so not only does it take longer to cut the broadcast salad mixes, but you've got to wash them and dry them, and that drying process takes time. And a lot of it's not active time. You can spend some time spinning those greens and getting them dry, but you can also lay them out on a table that's like a drying rack and let them air dry if you have some space to do that and some shade. It just takes a while. So it's up to you, but that can take some time. And then other crops that take a while, some of the root crops where you're washing the soil off of the roots, that can take some time, especially your garlic and your onions where you're like peeling off the outer layers so that they look pretty and that you're not tracking soil into your refrigerator. Those things can take a little bit more time. So that's a little bit about time management in harvesting. And yeah, I do a little bit of each crop every week, root crop greens, broadcast mixes, and fruiting crops. And I kind of have a schedule that I run based on all those different styles, and I know if I'm behind schedule or ahead of schedule based on what I'm going to harvest. All right, so, and Sharon had I wanted to answer Roz's question before I do this one. So Roz had a question about cutting tomatoes off the vine. Let me just make sure I word this right. So Roz's question was, what are the implications of harvesting tomatoes by cutting off a bit of the vine with a bunch of tomatoes on it, as they do for truss tomatoes or vine-ripened tomatoes in the supermarket? Yeah, so usually what they're cutting off, and I wish I had a slide to show you this, but basically when you have a tomato plant, off of the vine grows a branch, which is where all the tomatoes grow. So they're not, when they say tomatoes on the vine at the supermarket, it's not actually the vine. I don't know the name of the plant part, but it's a specific branch that grows off and is where the fruit grows. And so, yes, you can totally cut that off if you want to, if all of the fruit on that particular branch
Think about where you were at the start
by
of this
all
video.
means, cut it off. The chance of you getting all of the fruit ripe at the same time on that branch is so small. That happens at the grocery store because what they do a lot of times is they cut it before it's 100% ripe.
Think about where you were at the start of this video, growing whatever you wanted to eat, not thinking about how long each crop was going to take to harvest every week for the entire season. Now, look at what you know. Cherry tomatoes take up to 5 minutes per plant at peak season, and professional farmers let customers pick their own because it is not worth their time. Pole beans take a minute per plant and require 2 hands. Broadcast salad mixes take 30 seconds to a minute per square foot, plus washing and drying. But kale and collards, seconds per adult plant. Tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, spot them and grab them. Radishes, pull them straight out of the ground. And herbs, grab and cut without even looking. Fastest harvest per value in any garden. Every crop you plant is a commitment of harvesting time for an entire season. Now you know exactly what you are committing to. You are not the gardener who spends an hour harvesting cherry tomatoes anymore. You are the one who plans for harvest time before planting, who fills most of the space with kale, collards, herbs, and radishes, who knows exactly what each crop costs in time and chooses accordingly. If you want to keep learning from Stacey Murphy, there is a whole community of gardeners growing extraordinary food, completely free at growyourownvegetables.org. This Q&A was recorded at a past Grow Your Own Vegetables event, and what Stacey just shared with you took her years of growing, failing, and figuring out to discover. Now imagine sitting down with 15 experts exactly like her. 15 of the most respected gardeners, herbalists, and soil scientists on the planet, each sharing the single most powerful lesson they know, the insight that changed everything about how they grow food, the thing they wish someone had told them at the beginning. clinical herbalists who can turn your garden into a medicine cabinet, soil scientists who will change how you see every handful of dirt, food growers who have fed entire communities from a backyard. All of it waiting for you right now, completely free at the Superfood Garden Summit. Go to growyourownvegetables.org/summit, register in 30 seconds, and start watching immediately.